God. Look out. Oh, no! The God Almighty! The God Almighty! That killed him! Oh, my God. As God is my witness, he is broken in half!
Hey guys, it's WaifuGate again. We'll be doing another deck guide. This time it's on Sultai ramp, no Yorion. We've done a Yorion one, I think, in the past. If I haven't, I'll probably have to do another video deck guide on that. We'll figure it out. So here we go. So what's the deck do and how does it work? These are like the things I like to cover first. So we've got So the deck basically works at assessing our opponent's situation, gaining information through thought erasure, taking away a threat, such as Luca or whatever you need to take care of. Something that you have trouble answering based on your current hand or the likelihood of what you'll draw into to answer it, how easy it is to answer, all of that good stuff. A lot comes from this thought erasure. Also, a lot of people ask why I would run thought erasure over agonizing remorse, where agonizing remorse just exiles. The life loss isn't a big deal either, so I'm not going to pretend that that's the thing. So this is agonizing remorse right here. So I also have styles for both of those, so that's a little bit of a consideration, right? So we have styles for both, so that's good. So you can choose an on-land and then exile it. The exiling is super important because it shuts off stuff like ECD, Luris, etc. Like if you see a cat in your opponent's hand, you can just exile it and they can't really respond to it. You can exile, like, Zenith Flare, so that they don't really get back Zenith Flare, but anyway, it just makes it some things will be better exiled than just thrown into the graveyard. Uro, for example, is one of the bigger ones, but he's not too popular right now anyway, aside from like maybe Reclamation. So I would say that I like Thought Erasure a little bit more because it helps us hit land drops, and that can be a big thing. Consistency for land drops is one of the most important things in Magic, and you'll see me running like 4 copies of Thought Erasure, 4 copies usually of Omen of the Seas. Neutralizes, because you can pay 2 mana to discard those. The Uros that draw you cards, make you put lands into play, stuff like that. Anything that draws and or a growth spiral, just anything that helps with that is super important. Even Shark Typhoon, at 4 copies, you can cycle for 0 and get your land drops. So basically this list, to summarize, capitalizes on fixing our draws, drawing, just in general, ramping, and then doing really unfair stuff like Casualties of War or Nissa with Hydroid Krasis to make a big Krasis, drawing. That doesn't seem to do as much as it usually does, but it's still a good thing to help you stabilize, to help you lock in your advantage once you've kind of inched your way into it. It's just kind of that home run after you get the bases loaded, so to speak. All right. And then you also have Nissa and Shark Typhoon, which is actually pretty insane. You get to end of turn make like a 10-10 or a 15-15 Shark, because we have so many forests in our deck, like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 forests. So, sometimes she'll get us 7 forests, and we're likely to have forest on the field with that many total in our library on top of our ramp and everything, you know what I mean? So it's just really, really nice. We have Tamiyo for a little bit of recursion for that late game. We've got Extinction Event, which is good against, it's kind of good against Jeskai Yorion. It can be okay game 1. In game 2, it can help take out Dream Trawlers, like we'll see maybe in the gameplay later. There's just a lot to go with it, So it's just really, really nice. So, and then we have Neutralize, of course, to stop things like maybe Jeskai Yorion, maybe counter the the Yorion, counter the Teferi, so we can actually get stuff through. And we can slowly tax their resources with Casualties. That pretty much covers that. The Triomes are definitely awesome too. I'm so glad that we have one for Sultai. And the artwork's awesome with the alternate art. I think they're on sale a little bit ago, but anyway. So just a really good land base too. I feel like this might be a little incorrect. Like we could probably run a Scryland or 2 instead of some of our basics, but I do like having more than less with Fabled Passage, so we can search for the lands that we need in order to either maximize on Nissa profits, getting more forest out there, or just fixing for double black, so that way we can cast Casualties of War and such. And double blue for like neutralize. That's why we have the 2 blues, etc. Like it's just really, really consistent. In regards to matchups, so I think we're slightly favored against Jeskai Yorion just a little bit, maybe game 1, because we have a lot of counter magic, a lot of interaction with Thought Erasure. And sometimes we can just casualties of war and blow them out. Like they never financially recover from it if they're not planning against it. Because regular Sultai ramp, no Yorion is sort of like an underdog. Even if it's Yorion, it's like it still surprises them. I just feel like not running Yorion and having better access to our sideboard cards is better right now compared to running the 8th card basically in our starting hand. And we don't have to run things awkwardly, like, include X amount of copies of Atris or whatever else. We just kind of focus in on one strat, which is I want a casualties of war and or finish the game with Shark Typhoon. Boom. Maybe with a Nissa, etc. Like we have a few outs for our win cons late game so we don't run out of gas. And we're also not all in on the plan for like Hydroid Krasis with, here, I'll make a big Hydroid Krasis. If you answer this, I'll mill out because I just don't have anything left. No, we can just Shark Typhoon or something and hit them for like 20 or whatever. Make a Shark token army, etc. Like if our opponent can't punish us for it, it's just really, really good. Because even if they bounce the Shark Typhoon with Teferi, A, Teferi dies because we probably have a Shark on the field, and B, we can just cycle that again later for bigger creatures. So it's just crazy. Yeah, I think we're a little, like, I think we can go toe-to-toe with Jeskai Yorion if we tweak the deck a little bit, if I keep working at this list. Also, as I mentioned, we'll have the sideboard guide and everything updated on Aether Hub soon, if it's not already updated. I think I might have done a little bit of work on that. But the link to that will be under the featured deck section in the comments below, like in the details, as well as links to the other stuff that we're going to be working with this video. So you'll be able to find that whenever I reference that. It'll be there for you. So good and bad matchups. So Jeskai Yorion, we also have good sideboard stuff for that too, for the most part. This I'm not sold on, like the 3 Unmoored Egos. We'll break into the sideboard later. But we're trying to go over like, good, even, and bad matchups right now. So Jeskai Yorion, kind of even, I would say. Just because it's a powerful deck. I think compared to non-Yorion list or non-Yorion Jeskai list, I think we have about as even as a matchup as we can against those. Maybe Cycle has a slightly better matchup because they can go under the Cycle lists, or the Cycle lists can go under the Yorion lists before they really take off. And it demands them being consistent with their board wipes and whatnot. So what else? Tamir Reclamation, I feel like we do all right against because of Thought Erasure and such, and being able to counter a few things here and there. Plus our sideboard's set up for it a little bit. Casualties is just kind of nice against that deck when they go to tap out. The unfortunate part about this list is we're not running the Teferis. In the 4-color Yorion list, I think we're a little more favored versus Reclamation because we have access to Mithros of Nethroi, I think is how it's pronounced, and also Casualties of War and everything. But even in this matchup, I feel like with the amount of Shark Typhoons we run and everything else, like we kind of can get there for the most part, and we have a lot of life gain with Uro and Hydroid, and we have a lot of permission with our sideboard, like Negates and Mystical Disputes and potentially Unmoored Ego, but this one's a little scary because they can just expansion the Unmoored and exile all of your win cons, like your Shark Typhoons, for example. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword there when you bring that card in. Cycle, I think we're kind of even against. Game 1, we don't have a lot of life gain, but we can probably stabilize. I'd say the weakest part of our matchup against Cycle, like if you're running into a lot of Cycle, I would consider Ritual of Soot over Cry of Carnarium. I was running into more Saktos on the latter, so I kind of preferred Cry over Soot, but the more I fought Jeskai Cycle or just Boros Cycle, the harder it was to deal with the Fox plus something else. Because with Cry, you still have to deal with the Fox with another card, and with Extinction Event, same deal, odd or even. You either get their engines, like their stingers, off the table, or you get the Fox off the table. So you leave something behind either way. It's just kind of a rough matchup, game 1 at least. Casualties is pretty good because we can clean up Unbreakable Alliance and other stuff. We can clear the tokens out pretty easily. It's just trying to answer that Fox is the hardest part of the equation to really solve, I would say. Because it can just get really, really big. And Heartless Act, our spot removal here, doesn't really do anything. So I'd consider like maybe changing a few of these out for the meta. I'll probably work on this, like I said, if I have any updates on the sideboard guide, be under the featured deck and such. So I would say Jeskai is probably slightly unfavored game one, but more of an even matchup after sideboarding. What else is meta right now? We've got Sakdos. I think we're slightly favored against Sakdos just because we've got casualties, Extinction Event pre-boarded. We have a lot pre-boarded against them, and then we have some sideboard cards against them as well, like Cry of Carnarium, Heartless Act for like Mayhem Devils. Depends on what type of Sakdos list we're running to. So, and then like Yorion we do pretty well against just because of casualties. In the Yorion matchups, it's going to be like ECD versus casualties. Whoever has the most copies will win. And we're running a 60 card deck, so we might be able to see our cards a little more often than them in theory, right? Depending on how many Narsets and stuff they run. Narset was also a consideration of this list, and Atris, but they just didn't sit well with me. Like, we want to leave 3 mana open for neutralize sometimes, and Narset makes that very difficult. But being able to dig for more cards is also important. I'm just hoping that, Krasis is good enough for that, Uro is good enough for that. Just the amount of draw that we have with other cards in Shark Typhoon and whatnot. And then just being able to do one Krasis to sort of refill is good enough. There could be some consideration for like Chemistry's Insight or something, especially since we don't have Grafdigger's sideboard. If we're looking for like raw card advantage, it could be okay. I just don't like playing into the whole Narset Teferi duo combo where we get to draw no cards off of Chemistries or anything like that. Whereas our other cards sort of flex against those with Shark Typhoon and being able to cycle end of turn, deal with Teferi, and then getting ourselves out of the hole, so to speak. Able to check hand with Thought Erasure for a counter spell, then Casualties of War. Just kind of nice. Let's check what else could be meta real quick. Let me just bring up a meta list on this game here. So we got cycling. Winota is the other big one, I think, and maybe mono red. Yeah, I think that's probably good. So like Winota, I think we're kind of favored. Maybe not game one, but with our sideboard, we could kind of get there. Thought Erasure really hurts that deck. Disputes can kind of hurt that deck just to stop them from disputing us. And then Cry of Carnarium is pretty good because we can wipe out all the tokens that they need for their combo. It counters War Boss. We're pretty set up sideboard-wise versus Winota, to be honest. We can also Unmoored Ego their agents or whatever their big payoff card is. The problem with that is that, like, same thing with Yori and Luca with the sideboard. We're kind of breaking into the sideboard, as well as our good and even matchups. I'm okay with those two sections sort of fusing together. But yeah, so like Unmoored Ego, kind of a double-edged sword here as well, because if you go Unmoored Ego on agent, then their Winota can still kind of smack you in the face. They can get elite guard mages and just keep hitting you. And our Extinction Event isn't as good as like Shatter the Sky, so to speak, to just clean up the board completely. So we really do rely on hitting both Cry and then an Unmoored Ego later on to make sure that they can't agent us late game. Depends on which Winota that you're facing off against too. The red-white Winota, they have like Naya. There's a couple of different variations running around. I think it's going to get more popular since it plays a bit like an aggro deck on top of being able to pressure for late game with agents or whatever else. It's just a very hard deck to deal with. Temur Elementals is a little tricky too. That's another deck. I think we're pretty even against them. If they get a Genesis off, it's really rough, and they do get a lot of card advantage with Risen Reefs, etc. And we have a bit of a hard time dealing with Cavalier of Thorns. We can go Extinction Event Odd, and it gets rid of Risen Reef plus Cavalier. But if they have both of those cards up already, very possible that they have like a negate or a dispute or something back up. It's kind of hard to deal with sometimes. And Casualties is pretty okay against them, but they ramp up, so it doesn't hurt their lands as much as other decks. So I would say Temur Elementals is a bit even. Mono red, I think with our sideboard, we're really all set against it. We just put in Cry of Carnariums and kind of blow them out. Their next doesn't do anything. Obosh doesn't really have anything by the time it comes out because we Extinction Event for Odd. We basically catch the whole deck with one card. It's pretty easy. Aside from them from producing tokens that are even. Then it gets a little awkward, but it's Cry usually just cleans it up. So, and Heartless Act is nice. To say mono red's pretty favored for us. Like we're favored against them. I think that's pretty much it. Tamir Adventures is always hit and miss for control lists. Like I think we're slightly unfavored there just because even with 3 times casualties, like they have counter spells, they have Fae of Wish. Really gotta counter the Clover, do something to it. It's just game 1, it's just like they're gonna be favored, and then game 2, hopefully, we can have negates or something, or disputes for Fae, be able to answer the Lucky Clover a little bit easier. Maybe on Mordigo on the Fae of Wishes, probably bad, but just options to consider, really. It's not that popular of a deck list. It's just something to think about since it is resurfacing on the ladder right now. So mulligans, like what hands to feel out and whatnot, what hands to keep, what hands to mull. Depends on your matchup. You can always tell with a companion what you might have to mull for. So that's pretty important. I would say that you want either Growth Spiral is your best card. Growth Spiral plus 3 lands is almost keepable no matter what. No matter what your opponent's companion is or whatever, because you're able to just have a really powerful start. Other cards to see in your opening hand, you want to see Uro. Neutralize isn't terrible. Thought Erasure is obviously great. And then maybe like a Shark Typhoon or something. You don't want cards that you don't want to see really in your opening hand are Nissa, Tamiyo, Poluncros probably. Extinction Event's good depending on what they have for a companion. Like if they have Obosh or something, obviously you want to keep Extinction Event over other cards sometimes. You might even want to mull for it depending if you can't keep up. Because we don't have a lot of spot removal main deck. We're kind of relying on Extinction Event and then casualties to sort of pick it up, and then to rely on our sideboard late game. So I'd say that's pretty important. Against Yorion, you definitely want like neutralizes. You want Thought Erasure for sure. Anything that can kind of give you information on what type of Yorion they are before they start playing lands, before they start picking up. And then Shark Typhoon's always good against Yorion because then you can pressure Teferi. I don't think I'd want to have more than 1 copy unless I was really strapped on lands. But you definitely want like 3 lands plus like early game plays basically is the strat here. And casualties you don't really want to see in your opening hand. Like you want to draw into that even if you're against Yorion. You always want to be playing stuff, keeping counter spells open when you can on important turns, making sure to keep them off of that pesky Teferi, or to have the Shark Typhoon to hit the Teferi upside the head with, end of turn, and then continue keeping up the neutralize. The thing I like about the 4-color list is that it has Mithros of Nithroi, so we're able to like ping down like a token as they target it for Luca is really cute. But that also requires us to not let them resolve a Teferi, like Thought Erasuring the Teferi and such. So those are that pretty much covers it, I think. Like you can just kind of gauge what your opponent's companion is. If you don't have any information, Thought Erasure and Growth Spiral are really safe cards, plus 3 lands. You don't have 2 on the draw. You can keep 2 lands with Growth Spiral, especially if one of them is a Scry land. I don't think we run Scry lands though. Yeah. Oh yeah, we run 2. So if it's a Scry land plus like that, even 2 lands naturally, like with a Triome, it's fine. Big hands, like big land hands, like you have 6 lands plus. If 1 or 2 of them are Scry, if one of them's a cycle, plus you have Spiral, I would still probably keep that hand, but it's a little more risky, especially on the play where you're not drawing as much. But other than that, it's pretty easy to keep hands and such. But I feel like I should include that in the videos from now on. I feel like it's an important section. So yeah, we'll jump right into the gameplay now that we've kind of covered all the basics for the deck. Hope you guys enjoy that. And yeah, so overall I have had a pretty good time with this list, and I hope that it's been a bit helpful. All right, so we're going to jump right into the gameplay. This was against one of my viewers, Noxy. This is game 3 out of the best of 3. So it's pre-sideboarded, all of that stuff. We just lost last game. This is for the well, I mean, you guys know it's the same video, but this is for the Sultai ramp list. So last game we actually hit our Unmoored Ego tech, and called the agent, and we lost the game anyway. They were able to simply just tempo out. They were able to tempo out the. They had Dream Trawler as a backup, basically, when we unmoored their Agent of Treachery, which was half my game plan against the deck. Here we see that we have Growth Spiral. I'm considering Growth Spiraling here. We already thought Erasure to Luca, which is really good because now he's down 1 threat. And then we're just holding the mana up, because if we Growth Spiral into another Growth Spiral, we can crack the next land in response. So see here, we don't hit it, so we just put that into play tapped, and then we draw, trying to get a land. So unfortunately, missed the land drop, which is pretty huge. And then I think I just take Trawler here because it's kind of hard to deal with. But I might take Fires since they don't really cast Dream Trawler for a while, and we already have the backup to actually deal with Trawler anyway. So this means that we can't sack the Fabled Passage, but that's fine. We don't really need to. And Teferi comes down here, and that's fine. So we know that our opponent's pretty light on threats, so they might just cash out the Teferi now to play around, like, removal on their Planeswalker, which is good. It also makes it so that our Shark Typhoon hits really hard. So we just leave our mana open and pass. I use a macro to skip priority like that. And I've been trying to cut back on shuffling the cards like this. I know it bothers some people. I've been trying to use playing cards instead. I've got like a Pokemon sleeved up TCG thing here. But anyway, so same deal. Like, I have to crack this Fabled first. I think we go for like a Forest or something since our colors are good. It's always nice to be able to check to see what you have for resources, though. There is that. So they go ahead. Yep, Forest just for Nissa, basically, is the idea behind that. If you're set on colors, always grab green for Nissa, this type of a list. And here we go. So we got this swinging at Teferi. Hopefully no Shark Typhoon from our opponent. There's no pause, so we're good there. And here I'm like pretty tempted just to like maybe jam in the Crassus potentially. But I leave open another massive Shark Typhoon or a Mystical Dispute on the Trawler, which is also part of our sideboard plan. Which is a lot easier to do considering we have 60 cards, not 80, compared to some Yorion lists. So here's a Shark. Here's the Yorion. We have a Shark. I think what I do instead is I'm planning on using Extinction Event on Odd to keep our Sharks alive, I believe. And then still holding up the Dispute next turn for the Trawler, I think is the line. So they get another Plains, which thins their deck, which is good. Part of their game plan, it's what they want to do. And it gives them a threat, something to kind of stop these Sharks from just kind of chipping in damage and whatnot. I say Sharks, but they don't know about the second Shark yet. So we just do some quick math here, and we do the Shark Typhoon for 4. This also draws us to our next card, which is nice, and we hit the land drop. So now we have Casualties, which is better than the Extinction Event, which is nice. And we still get to leave open the Mystical Dispute, which is really, really strong. And we get rid of the token, which is actually a big deal. And here we end up removing the Steam Vents, which is their second red source for a hard cast Luca. So we're taking them off a lot of resources, you can see here. Now the main card that got us ahead here, we have to think back, is actually Thought Erasure, because we were able to see that our opponent didn't have a lot of proactive plays, all of that information, just making it so easy for us to assess what our opponent's going to do and to continue moving in the right direction. It's just fantastic. So I just pass, leaving open the Neutralize for whatever they might have here, and we can see them just like struggling to find an answer to do anything here, and that's going to wrap it up. So just like a really one-sided game. I want to quickly look back to the sideboarding process just to see before we wrap things up on the gameplay dealio here. If I move it, I think it's all the way back here, maybe. Oh, maybe yeah. So this is the second sideboard set here. Should be. Yeah, so I removed the agents. This is where we see they still have Trawler. Their reasoning, because we talked about the game afterward, their reasoning behind so So it looks like the sideboard process should be here somewhere. Like it shows it on the preview here, but it's just not showing here. Okay, here we go. So did I take out the Unmoored Egos or did I leave them in? That's what I want to know. Because this matchup was really close. So I put one more Extinction Event in, cut the Poly K, just to have another answer, I think, to Dream Trawler. Even though Dream Trawler is sort of answered by a couple other things. So yeah, overall good gameplay. I feel like I got to work on the sideboard tech a little more. And this will also be like kind of the outro here too. So like that's pretty much it. So that was the gameplay. You saw the gameplay, pretty nice. We'll have links down below to the list and everything. So that won't be a problem for you guys to see. The sideboard guide will be on Aether Hub. I usually do it under the deck. There's like a little place where you can edit and add details. Usually do like what the deck's about, sideboard tech, and then actual detailed sideboard guides on certain cards. And I'll have that updated very soon for this list. This is probably the list that I'm bringing to the Red Bull qualifier on the 16th, but I'm still up in the air. I just feel like it has a decent matchup against Fires and more specifically Jeskai Yorion. Just because you can check the hand with Thought Erasure, you've got Unmoored Ego for the agents, you can kind of fight one side or the other, and then still have really good tools like Mystical Dispute, and they're on an 80 card pile. So like their consistency might not always be there, whereas we're running the 60 card deck without Yorion. So that's what I kind of like about it. But yeah, if you like these deck guides, I'll be working on putting like 2 or 3 of these up a week. They're always going to be connected to the Aether Hub decks that are posted there, so you can export them, see the new YouTube video, all of that stuff. All of it's going to be linked up. So really appreciate you guys, and I hope to see you next time for the next video. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the comments below, or stop by the stream and say hi and ask away.